liquid IV. I really do. Just before we started recording, I went to my refrigerator, got my big glass of liquid IV that's always sitting in there, and I gulped it down. I have trouble meeting those hydration demands that you see all over the place. This is making it super easy. I feel like it is a delight to drink liquid IV to keep myself hydrated. And now that summer's here, I am going to keep taking it to the gym. I'm going to take it on my hikes. I'm going to make sure that I always have a supply on hand. It just is really a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's true. It's just one stick of liquid IV delivering superior hydration to water alone. It's 3 times more hydrating than the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Plus, it's got 8 vitamins and nutrients, and it's hydration for endurance, mental clarity, and overall well-being.
They've got 4 delicious sugar-free flavors. I love the lemon lime. I also am totally digging the raspberry melon. It's a 0 sugar hydration solution. It's got no artificial sweeteners. It's clinically tested. It hydrates more than water alone. It's just terrific.
You can even pair liquid IV flavors with your summer activities. So you could take sugar-free white peach to the pool for some sunbathing. Liquid IV is a must-have for your bag of summer necessities.
So turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code Fluster at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration using promo code Fluster at liquidiv.com.
I'm telling you, you're going to love it. And what anxious parents tend to do is they do something called interview for pain. So say you've got a child who's dealing with this and they're making progress. They come home from school and the first question is, how was your tummy today? Did it hurt? Did you handle it? And we want to get out of those questions and we want to say things like, hey, how did your day go? Or, hey, how was your math test? Or did you get to play that fun game with your friend? We have to make sure that we as parents, you focus on, you amplify, and we're really working on parents moving out of seeing their child or themselves as a walking symptom, and that we have to ask questions about it and we have to figure it out and we have to make sure they're okay. The more we pull back from that language, the better off our kids are.
Welcome to Season 6 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about a family's anxiety and all the big feelings, too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious, and I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a Flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll give you concrete steps to take and the words to say. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Lynn.
You know how I'm picky about the guests we have on the show?
Yes.
On the pod, I should say. So we have a guest today that passes the picky test because she is incredibly knowledgeable about an issue that a lot of parents worry about, and it's about tummies and about poop. Mindy Szelap. We are so happy to have you here. Mindy is a social worker like me. I've known her for many years. She is a brilliant therapist. She also, if you recognize the name, it's probably because I talk about her parenting groups all the time, which we will go into in detail in a little bit because they are also fabulous. So Mindy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mindy, my first question is, why are you called the Poop Lady?
I am called the Poop Lady because I help teach kids how to poop. Actually, I coach their parents to help teach them how to poop. For some kids, it's really, this normal function really becomes a problem.
And it spirals into a lot of huge difficulties, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can go on for years. It affects everyone in the family. It is confounding to a lot of different professionals who are only looking at one part of the problem. And it's also a little bit embarrassing and secretive for families, so they don't get the help they need until it's a really big problem.
And how does one become the Poop Lady? How did you get into this?
Oh boy. So I spent the majority of my career working in pediatric hospitals with lots of different kids and different specialties. And I landed in a pediatric GI clinic. And there is a lot of overlap between the tummy and psychological issues. We call it the brain-gut axis. We feel a lot of emotion in our stomachs. There's a lot of nerves there. There's more nerves in your GI tract than anywhere else in your body. And so a lot of kids who were coming in with this mystery tummy pain and getting the $1 million workup, a lot of it was actually rooted in anxiety. And so I started some program that used non-pharmaceutical interventions to help these kids learn to manage this discomfort and learn to kind of move back into their lives.
When do you see this starting to show up? At what age? Because obviously when every parent is focused on their kids' poop when they're babies, but you're talking about pooping at a later stage. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the functional GI issue, which is what we see in GI clinics, is more about the pain and more about the over focus on the GI tract and that messaging back and forth between the gut and the brain that's really wrapped up in anxiety. Now, a lot of GI issues have roots in anxiety, and the poop issue can actually start when kids are very, very little, even pre-verbal. The poop issue can actually start when they're babies, and it can start from having one hard poop, which for some reason flips a switch in the child's brain that pooping feels dangerous because it's painful.
And then they start with holding.
Correct. They start with holding because when the signal comes to poop, as it naturally does about 10 to 15 minutes after people eat, these kids, rather than going and taking themselves to the potty or relaxing into their pull-up, they withhold. They squeeze. They don't empty their rectum like they're supposed to.
So I've treated kids with this, as you have, Mindy. When we talk about it impacting the whole family, I mean, behavioral issues. Just imagine going through your day and holding in your poop all day, how distressing, how distracting that is. These kids will act out. They become really angry. They become quiet or withdrawn. They hide. We can have a ton of behavioral issues that show up because they're trying not to poop. I often say life is better when things are working well from hole to hole. And this, it's true. It's true. You know that's true. And this causes such discomfort and such focus that it really throws so many things out of whack. They don't eat. They have difficulty at school. They start having accidents because it leaks out. And that's actually, there's a name for that, encopresis. That's one of the issues that you deal with a lot. And then also tell us about functional abdominal pain.
So functional abdominal pain actually is something that often starts rather innocently, where a child will have an organic tummy issue like a stomach flu or a food poisoning, something where the nerves in the tummy are telling the brain there's something toxic down here. We need to get rid of it. So, the child throws up a bunch or has a lot of bowel movements. And the problem is that once that issue resolves, oftentimes those nerves in the GI tract stay very activated. Now, we have more nerves in our GI tract than anywhere else in our body. They're very connected to emotion. And when those nerves stay activated, rather than the toxic whatever that's in the stomach getting those nerves going, it's anxiety. So there becomes this anxiety feedback loop where even benign GI sensations like air moving through the tract or digesting food, the brain can interpret that as pain, which, because there's such an over focus, that feedback, that the anxiety and the sensation go back and forth and really amplify the sensation the child's feeling in their stomach.
So under this umbrella of anxiety and gut-related issues in kids, I think I'm hearing two, if not more, types of ways it manifests, because you mentioned the painful poop and then a switch is flipped where a child's like, we must avoid that pain again. So then there is the withholding pattern. But then what you also just mentioned, there are all of these nerves in the GI tract where you could have a GI bug and a lot of vomiting, so then that also creates a pattern of fearing of throwing up. But then there's also just the stomach pain part too. So there's a lot here.
There is a lot there. And you also, you hit on another one, emetophobia. When children have some vomit episodes, they again begin to over-attend to sensations in their tummies. And then they begin to get fearful that they might throw up again. And that feedback loop turns into a phobia of throwing up. One of the really big problems with these GI issues, and something we're dealing with a lot in society right now, is school avoidance. Nobody wants something embarrassing to happen at school. These kids tend to really begin to withdraw from lots of activities because when your stomach's feeling gurgly and you fear something embarrassing happening, or even being stuck in a classroom and your tummy hurts and there's no one to help you, these kids don't want to do that. And the other problem is when they wake up with a tummy ache, rather than saying, I'm scared to go to school, in the beginning, parents look at that and they're like, oh, my kid's sick. And very quickly, the anxiety learns that having a tummy ache means you don't have to go to school and you don't have to be afraid at school and have your anxiety at school. So it really becomes very reinforcing to stay home with tummy aches.
Mm-hmm. And tummy aches are so common too, right? It's not like we're talking about something that everybody doesn't experience. And I think what all of these presentations have in common is that it is the promotion of something that's normal into something that's an emergency. So it's normal to have that sensation when you have to poop. It's normal sometimes if you have a little hard poop for it to feel a little uncomfortable. It's normal for you to have a gurgly tummy. It's normal for you to feel a little nauseous, even if you're car sick or if whatever. And all of that normal stuff gets promoted to this emergency place. And then, of course, we know with anxiety, avoidance is the name of the game. So they want to get rid of the pain. They want to get rid of the sensation. They want to get rid of the fear, like you say, Mindy, of something embarrassing happening. And so avoidance becomes the strategy that families really get stuck in.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, Mindy, one of the things Lynn is always so focused on is both prevention and treatment. So it'll be very helpful for you to sort of outline as parents, how do we start helping our kids poop well, poop often, and all of the other things. We'll be right back. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. I could just tell my kids to walk home from school now. I don't have to pick them up every day. But other things don't, like having that conversation about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage their money until they're actually in charge of it. That's where Greenlight can help. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills. With the Greenlight app, kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely thanks to games that teach money skills in a fun, accessible way. The Greenlight app also includes a chores feature where you can set up one-time or reoccurring chores customized to your family's needs. And you can reward kids with allowance for a job well done. This was a game changer for us because when I finally got my kids to do the chores, I can't say that I was always super great at remembering to pay them, and we couldn't keep track, and Greenlight has set us straight. Millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight, and it's the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and families to navigate life together. Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/fluster. That's greenlight.com/fluster. to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/fluster. Okay, so if hats were like car rentals, I have spent my life renting the economy car. And then I got my first melon hat to discover what a luxury hat is all about. These baseball hats are built to last 5 times longer than any other hat. They're made of these natural antimicrobial properties so sweat doesn't break down the hat. There is no sweat stain, no smell, and they're built for the water. They don't even lose shape if you take them in the water. They also float if you drop them in the water. And if you need to wash them, they come right back to shape and look brand new. The sun is out and summer's here, and I've loved wearing my melon hat on my weekly hikes. They have the most comfortable fit, and you can really feel the difference in the materials that they use. They have snapbacks, but they also offer small, classic, or extra large to fit every sized head. And they have a fit finder on their website, so it breaks it down and tells you what size you should order. And they have a different option to match everyone's style and face shape. Use code Fluster at checkout for 30% off your order. If you're trying to figure out a Father's Day gift, trust me, this is exactly what they want. Go to MELIN.com and use code Fluster at checkout for 30% off. Melon rarely offers discounts, so don't miss this opportunity. It's hard to find a great mentor who can help you level up. My dream mentor, Martha Stewart. So I was really excited when I heard that she has a class on Masterclass.
Yeah. And, I love to play tennis. And who doesn't want to learn tennis from Serena Williams? I mean, the top player ever, showing you what to do. It's a pretty great opportunity. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode.
I love downloading them before I go on a long plane ride so that I just feel like that time was like the best spent for me.
Yeah, you're traveling and you're also getting relationship advice from Esther Perel, who is incredibly engaging and full of useful information.
If you didn't like to fly, it'd be a really great time to listen to the class on mindfulness by John Kabat-Zinn.
Even if you like to fly, who can't use a little John Kabat-Zinn while you're traveling?
That's right. Picturing a little bitty John Kabat-Zinn. May I help you with your bag? Every time I make scrambled eggs, I think of the class that I took with Gordon Ramsay, from cooking to writing to interior design. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass.
Right now, our listeners will get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster.
Masterclass.com/fluster.
Okay, we're back. Okay, so we've talked about two things, Mindy. We've talked about encopresis. That's when kids withhold and there's this chronic constipation and these accidents. And then we've also talked about functional abdominal pain. So both of these are GI disorders, but they're pretty different, aren't they?
They're different sort of in the way they manifest. And the thing that really is hard for parents, I think, are things that have a medical component to them. You know, and I know that some of the hardest things for parents are things that involve eating, sleeping, and pooping. These are three things that parents can't control in their child, and they really want to. And so parents get highly, highly anxious around all of these sort of things that are connected to physiology.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to talk about what we do for both of these things. Let's say we've got a child and maybe a parent is listening right now and they're saying, oh my gosh, I have never heard this term encopresis. And my kid has been having little accidents and pooping in his pants. And we've been treating this chronic constipation, but I've never heard about this. And so they're listening. Give us what you would do, because you're the poop lady. What are the important things? Because parental involvement is critical in this. You know, I always say I don't see kids alone. This is why, everybody. As the poop lady, what's your protocol? A family comes to see you. You are able to identify very quickly, okay, we've got some encopresis going on. What are you going to do?
Okay, this is such a complicated problem. And often by the time people have made it into my office, they've seen many different professionals. You know, sometimes they're told by their pediatrician the child's going to grow out of it, which doesn't happen really frequently because the kid kind of loses the ability to sit and, as I say to the parents, sit and relax their bottom on the potty and let the poop come out. And they're really afraid of it. The reason this is so complicated, I kind of liken it to that parable about the blind men and the elephant, where everybody's touching a different part of the elephant, so nobody knows it's an elephant. You need to keep a lot of things on your dashboard to get through this problem. There is a real physiological component. These kids have got to be on Miralax. They have got to be on Miralax for a lot longer than you think, because this problem has gone on a while and everything's a little stretched out. and they're not going to have normal toileting habits where they're feeling the sensation and they're going for quite some time. Things have to shrink back down. The whole bedrock of my program is we're building an external scaffolding with external cues so that the child can learn to toilet regularly while all the physiological stuff is coming back into line. So the kid is going to have to be on Miralax for a while. Miralax keeps water in the colon. It keeps the poop soft. So children often develop this problem even from having one hard poop. We do not want to freak them out about pooping, but after we've got all this work done, by then having a hard poop and getting back to square one. Okay, so you've got to keep the poop soft. Before you even do that, you've got to clean them out completely. Parents hate doing this. Kids hate doing this. I say make the weekends so fun. Let them do all the stuff you normally don't let them do, like watch a lot of TV and drink a lot of Gatorade with Miralax in it, because pooping's hard and you're going to be pooping all weekend. Get them cleaned out so they're starting fresh, because once they start with the program, I want them to have immediate success, okay? Because this is a long, long road, and it's a frustrating road, and there's a lot of setbacks along the way. So there's a physiological part, which I direct them to their pediatrician to oversee. There is the behavioral part, which is actually going and sitting on the potty. Lots of kids have phobias of potties. They're afraid. Lots of kids are pooping in a pull-up, hiding in a closet, pooping in a pull-up, or doing it somewhere where other people can't see. That's the only way they can relax. So moving them behaviorally, desensitizing them, teaching them how to relax their bottom while they're sitting on the potty, all really, really important things that we might need to break that down into lots and lots of steps. Another part of this is actually, that goes with the behavioral is the psychological. They're scared. A lot of people see these kids and they smell like poop. And you're like, why can't you smell this? Right? Why? Well, it's sort of like a smoker who gets used to the smell of smoke. Or they've been trying to solve this embarrassing problem for so long that they've given up. So this is just the way they roll. And so we also need to work on bringing them back to the reality of paying attention to sensations in their body, paying attention to when they have messes in their underwear. And then there's the parenting part, which is so critical, of helping the parents to really calm down, focus in on their kid, and not treat this like an emergency. The level of consistency this takes is unreal. Parents need to slow down.
So you guys see this at the pathological level that you do. Obviously, a lot of listeners are dealing with this, but tell us a little bit more. Like, I have basic dumb questions. The kids smell like poop because they are having poop accidents. I'm just confirming. So their effort of like holding the poop and withholding, at some point it just fails. And then they poop in their pants. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, sometimes it's called the sneaky poop, right? So we think of constipation as hard poop, and oftentimes what it actually is there's hard poop in there, and then there's liquid poop that's going around it because there's no more room in the colon, and it just squeaks out and ends up in their underwear, and it can be really, really embarrassing.
So kids who are having poop accidents and parents who might not have made this connection should be really listening up.
Yes, if your child is coming home with a lot of streaks in their underwear or even poops, your child is withholding. And this is something that needs to be addressed. The longer this goes on, the harder it is to treat and to break these old habits.
Does diet play a role in this at all?
That's a really interesting question. Yes. So another reason we're having lots of constipation is kids aren't doing a lot of things kids are supposed to do. They're not going out. They're not exercising. They're not running around. They're on screens. So they're not even paying attention to these poop signals because they're so dissociated and so absorbed in their screens. So I would say one of the really important things is activity. Diet is important. A lot of people will go on these like crazy elimination diets and seeing dietitians. But listen, the core problem here is your kid is withholding. Okay. Whatever is in that colon, it's not coming out. And getting overly focused on poop, fiber, all this diet stuff, we need to just keep the poop soft with the Miralax. So if you're going to focus on one thing, you're going to focus on just keeping the poop soft so that the kid can poop.
Just to clarify, when you say people will go and get on these elimination diets, that's often because they're treating constipation as some sort of nutritional problem. They're treating the withholding as, well, maybe they have a sensitivity to gluten, or maybe we have to do this. And so they're focusing a lot on diet and nutrition, where the problem is really their withholding. So they could be eating cherries and grapes all day long and they're still going to withhold.
It would be a very common response for parents to want to focus on the diet because they would like to perceive the problem as simple as possible and something where they have somewhat of a sense of control. Am I right that that's like the first place that they all go to before it doesn't work, they don't get the results they're looking for, and then they need to figure out a different intervention?
Yeah. And this is also, I think, what happens oftentimes. It happens with all sorts of anxiety issues that we see, is that they go down the medical route and they're trying to treat the symptoms. It happens with all sorts of different things, like with sleep, or a child is refusing to go to this or that. And people are always looking for this outside thing that's causing the problem, that maybe if we fix that and adjust that, like think of a kid who's having difficulty sleeping in their bed. So we get night lights and we get blankies and we get weighted blankies and we get this and we get that. And we're not really addressing the anxiety. I think the same thing happens with the poop issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I set expectations at the very beginning when I'm working with parents. I'm like, this is going to be a process. It takes incredible amounts of patience and consistency to teach your child to get this developmental milestone of listening to their body signals and pooping in the potty. There's often a lot of just parent coaching around being able to remain calm, remain focused, identify the things that are getting in the way from giving you time to work on this and giving you resiliency to work on this, because it's a tough problem. It's a tough pattern to break.
I actually know a kid who is like a classic example of this, who did start withholding after a painful poop, who I believe actually did grow out of it with a little bit of help, but I don't know the details from the parent. But when you see families, do you observe a commonality where there had to have been a pretty anxious culture in the family for that original switch to go off? Or is the pain of the poop enough to really escalate into this common pattern? How much of it is the culture of anxiety that has enabled all these elements to then set off these alarms in the body?
It's an interesting question. I think that once the problem shows up, there's a lot of anxiety in the family. There's a lot of frustration in the family. If we're looking at families that we can see more patterns of GI things, I would say the functional abdominal pain. Often there's a lot of anxiety in the family, right? That's really reinforcing those patterns. A lot of encopresis it's really this frustration about not being able to control something that's a bodily function, and it makes everybody on edge.
All right. You want to talk to us about functional abdominal pain? Tell us a little bit about that, Mindy, Poop Lady.
Well, functional abdominal pain is more of an anxiety problem than I think we often give it credit for. It is children whose brains are over focused on their GI tract, and those little friable nerves that are so upset, that are so over communicating with the brain. Part of the feedback is also that when kids don't feel good, when kids have a tummy ache, they go to their parents. The parents are really involved in helping them to feel better. So a lot of focus is going on this tummy pain. People get really anxious about it. And that's, a lot of the chronic pain stuff gets a lot better when the parents are able to really back up and regulate their own feelings.
And this really is a chronic pain thing, because we know that there are other chronic pain syndromes that happen too. This just happens to be focused on the gut. Parents who have sort of recognized maybe that they're in this cycle, they've got a chronic tummy ache, and maybe they have been down that path. They've gotten the full workup. Maybe they've tried all the different things. They've changed the diet. They've done this. They've done this. They've done this. What are the key things that make it worse? Which I think you already said, actually, it's over focusing on it. What are the things that parents can begin to change and shift if they're caught in this pattern?
Well, One of the things that is really important is to begin to kind of step back a little bit. And your child is having some uncomfortable sensations in their tummy. This is real pain. This isn't made up pain. One of the most invalidating things you can do, and is actually really leads to worse outcomes in the psychological treatment of this, is telling a kid it's all in their head. So when the pediatrician or the GI doctor says, oh, I don't have any medicine for you, this is something that's just anxiety, that's really invalidating. They are having actual pain.
When they say there's nothing wrong with your tummy.
Ugh, yeah. So we need to start talking about this as a different kind of intervention, right?
What do you wish the doctor said instead?
Oh, I like them to say, gosh, all of these medicines we have aren't going to work on this issue, but we have some things that will work, right? We have some different kind of interventions that will work. So setting up some positive expectancy, setting up some hope, very much validating the kids having a tummy ache and that it hurts. And then saying, and there's a different way to solve this problem.
Do you think, I'm sure you do, but it would also be helpful if the medical person would actually give a little bit of an explanation for what this thing is, that it's these nerves that are overactive? I find when I'm talking about anxiety, I say this all the time, I am astounded, everybody, by how often kids don't know how this thing works. And if you just explain it to them, say, hey, it's your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. I would think the same thing would be true for functional abdominal pain. Give the parents and give the kids a really solid explanation of how this thing works.
Yeah, that your brain and your tummy are talking to each other way too much. Your brain doesn't know that your tummy is okay down there, that it doesn't need to pay so much attention, that it can pay attention to other things, that some of these things that are happening in your tummy are actually you digesting food, right? Or some little air moving through the tummy.
What should a parent do? So say they've gotten this information, maybe they've been told functional abdominal pain, or maybe they've been told, look, we can't find anything wrong with your kid's system. Everything seems to be working fine. What's the key thing you want parents to do in order to move forward?
Well, I think one of the really important things is de-amplifying the pain in the family. A lot of families are revolving around this child's pain. Not to invalidate the child's pain, but these kids begin to withdraw from a lot of things. So putting back in expectations for the child. The child needs to, if other kids in the family are doing chores, this kid needs to do chores. Beginning to recognize when that child's doing things that are active and things that are engaged. When parents are really anxious, they have a negativity bias. And so they're always looking for the pain symptoms. When a child's not doing well and withdrawing, going in, trying to pull them out. We want to really, really start looking for the ways the child is functioning, okay? And amplifying that, giving the child a different way to focus instead of over-focusing on this tummy. Be very, very careful about school avoidance. Once you go down that road, oh boy. And a lot of these kids, once they get to school, they feel much better. The worst time is in the morning. So you want to make sure your kid keeps going to school, no matter what.
And engaged in other activities too, right? So if they go to dance class, or if they go to Little League, or if they have play dates with friends and birthday parties, because what I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen all the time, is that families begin to be very careful about where they send their kid. They start treating the child as if they are fragile and delicate and there's something wrong with them. And all of that makes the problem worse.
So as a mom listening to this and very familiar with the way Lynn has a process of externalizing and talking about the worry part, let me ask you both this. Would the goal, if you are a parent of a young child who's showing this kind of pattern, would the goal be to do all of the steps required so that eventually your child says to you, my anxiety part, Thelma is bullying my tummy right now?
Absolutely. That's exactly where we want to get to. Right. And when I started doing this, when I started developing at the very beginning of the non-pharmaceutical interventions, which involved things like pediatric hypnosis, which is highly effective on functional GI disorder, by the way, and some other types of calming down of the nervous system. What I found when we didn't treat the underlying anxiety is it moved to a different part of the body. These are kids that tend to be pretty somatic. Okay, so the place I want to get them to is exactly what you said, realizing that this is their worry part, right? That's talking to them about this thing, and they don't have to pay so much attention to that.
Or it helps them recognize the importance of learning to manage their worry part, because the worry part could bully them at any time, and no one likes a bully.
Right. And it's sort of, what I talk about a lot is that the content of what you worry about doesn't really matter. The corollary in this situation is what body part these symptoms are showing up in doesn't really matter either.
Right. Because it could be a headache too, right?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if you've got somebody, we used to call people hypochondriac. We don't use that term anymore. Mindy used the more modern appropriate term of somatic, but people who are over focused on physical symptoms. And oftentimes, if I'm talking to an adult that's over focused on physical symptoms, they go to the doctor all the time. They're taking over the counter medication all the time. They have a long history of this. And probably as a child, there was some symptoms, there was some indication that this was the road we were going down. And it runs in families too.
Well, it does run in families. And that's a really good point, Lynn, because we also find if you've got a kid with functional GI disorder, often the parent has some functional symptoms as well and is modeling a lot of pain behaviors.
It seems like as a parent, especially of younger children, we like to talk about prevention as much as we can, Lynn. Especially if you are a parent who that you're a little somatic
Yeah.
or your partner's somatic. And so then that modeling, it's just so critical to go into that neutral space and really be mindful of how you're talking to your child when they come at you with these symptoms. It matters a lot, I guess. I mean, I appreciate that I hadn't really thought of it this way before, but we talk so much about social connection in the show. We talk about as parents how we want to remain really neutral and calm and supportive, usually when it's talking about building these social skills. But I love the emphasis here on we are helping you build relationships with your body. And so these moments of how do we model conversation when things get a little rough are equally important.
Yeah. And what anxious parents tend to do is they do something called interview for pain. So say you've got a child who's dealing with and they're making progress. They come home from school and the first question is, how was your tummy today? Did it hurt? Did you handle it? We want to get out of those questions and we want to say things like, hey, how did your day go? Or, hey, how was your math test? Or did you get to play that fun game with your friend? We have to make sure that we as parents are not emphasizing, right? I mean, that phrase, Mindy knows this phrase as well as I do, what you focus on, you amplify. And we're really working on parents moving out of seeing their child or themselves as a walking symptom and that we have to ask questions about it and we have to figure it out and we have to make sure they're okay. The more we pull back from that language, the better off our kids are.
Yeah, and there is so much research in the pain world about parents who are more catastrophizing and focus more on the child's symptoms. Those children have higher pain scores and the pain goes on for longer. And, the longer pain goes on, the chronicity of it is harder to treat. So even the very act of the parent stepping back, talking less, not catastrophizing, focusing on the child's strengths, that in and of itself is a huge intervention.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's take a break. And when we come back, that's a lovely segue, Mindy, into I just want to talk to you about the groups that you're doing and what parents are learning and how wonderful this message of parents stepping back is so important in so many ways. So let's take a break and let's talk about your groups. Liquid IV. I really do. Just before we started recording, I went to my refrigerator, got my big glass of liquid IV that's always sitting in there, and I gulped it down. I have trouble meeting those hydration demands that you see all over the place. This is making it super easy. I feel like it is a delight to drink liquid IV, to keep myself hydrated. And now that summer's here, I am going to keep taking it to the gym. I'm going to take it on my hikes. I'm going to make sure that I always have a supply on hand. It just is really a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's true. It's just one stick of Liquid IV delivering superior hydration to water alone. It's 3 times more hydrating than the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Plus, it's got 8 vitamins and nutrients, and it's hydration for endurance, mental clarity, and overall well-being.
They've got 4 delicious sugar-free flavors. I love the lemon lime. I also am totally digging the raspberry melon. It's a 0 sugar hydration solution. It's got no artificial sweeteners. It's clinically tested. It hydrates more than water alone. It's just terrific.
You can even pair Liquid IV flavors with your summer activities. So you could take sugar-free white peach to the pool for some sunbathing. Liquid IV is a must-have for your bag of summer necessities.
So turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code Fluster at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration using promo code Fluster at liquidiv.com.
I'm telling you, you're going to love it.
Hey, are you a parent of a teenager? Are you feeling overwhelmed about how to be what they need while also holding limits and boundaries that keep them safe? Are you tired of conversations that negate how messy this season of parenting is? Well, I've got you. My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Every week, I come to you with an interview digging into tough topics with experts I trust and solo shows that go deep into the personal growth and mindset needed to raise teens in a way that grows them into confident, capable young people. I am not afraid of getting real about the intersection of conscious parenting and the teen years, while also bringing in vulnerability, humor, and lightness. I'm walking the path with you and honored to serve. Listen to Joyful Courage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts.
Okay, so now back to the show. So Mindy, you have started doing these small group parenting classes that I feel like you could do 50 of them a week and I would fill them for you because they're exactly what people need right now. You're not doing a 50 a week, but tell us about them because I want parents to know about this resource.
Are they online?
Yeah.
Amazing.
These groups really focus on parental accommodation. It's from a treatment modality called SPACE, which is supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions, which is something that Lynn has been doing for decades, by the way. But it is about addressing, when we think about anxiety in children, it's highly relational. The parent and the child are very locked in a dynamic with each other. And what SPACE does is it helps the parent move from a place of unwittingly supporting a child's anxiety to a place of supporting a child's coping. Change happens very, very fast. As Lynn always talks about connection, these families have no idea what's going on in each other's homes. And being a group with other parents and noticing exactly the same patterns, because anxiety is so redundant, is happening everywhere, is very reassuring for them and very encouraging of parents to be able to do this hard work of stepping back. It's active, it's strategic, things change really quickly, and the evidence is there. The numbers are there, it is effective as for some kids doing cognitive behavioral therapy directly with the child.
That was pretty powerful. Let's just repeat some of those key things that you just said, that with the parents actively work on their own dynamic of helping a child manage their anxiety, and the way they're contributing to it is as effective as the child going through therapy. So I know you say this all the time, Lynn, but it's like, let that sink in, everybody. Let that sink in.
Well, I get emails, I'm sure Mindy does too, but I get emails from people looking for help and they'll say, I have a 6-year-old who's having a lot of difficulty going to school and I'm looking for a therapist for my 6-year-old. And I always want to be like, you need a therapist for you to help you with your 6-year-old. And that's what the research shows. Again, 6-year-olds can't learn this on their own. And it is the parental accommodation that we're targeting from the very sweetest, most caring places in these parents. They are trying to help their child. They just don't know the direction to go. So Mindy, give us an example, like how often do the groups meet? How many people are in the group? And then give us a success story.
Okay. My series, the one I run, is 7 group sessions weekly and 1 individual session per family to sort of tailor the treatment to their child. And so they can ask all the questions and make sure they're really doing the learning. And I keep it very small. There's a maximum of 6 families per group. And that's it.
I have a question. I'm fascinated because Lynn and I have a Facebook group that has a lot of listeners in it. And from very well-meaning places, when listeners are trying to address and offer advice to other listeners, they would be, as Lynn calls it, doing the disorder. So tell us about that shift in that peer-to-peer support when they get it. They might get it when they're hearing another family be really entrenched in their patterns before they realize their own. But I bet that's probably one of the more satisfying aspects of this group.
Oh, yes. Listen, about by session 3, I'm saying, hey, spoiler alert, guys, you might be the anxious one. Right? Everybody laughs. Everyone's like, yeah, I guess that's me. Right? So they really see each other. This is not a support group, but it's highly supportive and it's highly validating. And listen, I love running these groups because I get the most loving parents. I get the most attached parents. You know, the thing about anxiety is you are attending to your child, but all the time, right? And it's hard to step back.
Yeah.
Okay, so these parents really love their kids. This is about attachment, right? But the anxiety treatment is paradoxical. It's not intuitive. So teaching parents very simple, strategic things to do change the dynamic so quickly.
It's fantastic.
Give us a few.
Oh,
I know one of them.
Is it talk 85% less?
Talk 85% less, right? Just shut your pie hole, everybody. Shut your pie hole.
I have so much feedback from people in my groups and in individual therapy that if they walk away with one thing, it's this.
Yeah. All right. Give us another one that you offer that is just maybe we take for granted, but that it blows these parents' mind.
Oh, this is a really simple one that this is so obvious, but you can't make another person feel a certain way.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us about that. Give us an example.
Okay. You're only responsible for your own emotions. If your child is melting down and you are talking to them and trying to get them to feel differently than they feel, that whole prefrontal cortex, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Allow your child to have their emotional experience. Okay. And then when they're calm and regulated, you can step back in. You don't have to leave them. You don't have to abandon them. You can sit in the room with them, but you don't have to get so wrapped up and involved. And that's a relief to parents. They think they need to stop this thing as if it's dangerous for a child to melt down.
How do people sign up? And I have a feeling many listeners will want to do so. So tell us a little bit about your process.
Okay, well, you can go to my website, which is bayarea.spacetreatment.com. You can read a lot about it. You know, so I've got my regular space groups. And by the way, space is effective. I take people in my groups probably from right before starting kindergarten. Space is effective through young adulthood. There's a space protocol called Failure to Launch. And the interesting thing is you're like, how could a 6-year-old and an 18-year-old in the same group, the parents, how could they ever relate to each other? Well, number one, the 18-year-old parents of 18-year-olds are like, oh my God, I wish I would have done this.
Right. Because their 18-year-old was 6 once.
Absolutely. And you know what? When you get to the root of melting down, a lot of it's really similar across the lifespan. You know, a teenage tantrum and a 4-year-old tantrum, when you really step back, there's a lot of similarities.
A 45-year-old tantrum.
Absolutely.
Right? You ever been on a plane with someone who's having a tantrum? Boy, do they look like a 4-year-old.
Well, if a family's not doing the work actively in something like this or working in therapy, there's a baseline of emotional skills that's going to just stay the same even if you get older.
That's right.
So I have my regular space classes. In the fall, I'm going to be offering some space groups for ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and that's kids who are super picky eaters. And SPACE is evidence-based for that. SPACE is evidence-based for chronic pain issues like functional abdominal pain. And then there's failure to launch, which is actually a different group of parents whose kids can't get out of the house, can't get to college, can't get jobs, are still living at home and highly dependent.
These are fantastic resources. Mindy, thank you so much for joining us today.
We will put all of the information in the links in the show notes, everybody. Mindy, I so value our friendship, and I don't know how many years we've known each other for, but it's been a long time. And I just love these groups. I love what you're doing. I love all of your information about pooping. It is so, so helpful. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Hey there, I'm Debbie Reber, the founder of Tilt Parenting and the author of the book Differently Wired. The mission of Tilt is to change the way neurodivergence, whether that's having a learning disability, having ADHD, being gifted, autistic, or some combination of all of the above, is perceived and experienced so differently wired kids and the parents like us raising them can truly thrive. On the Tilt Parenting podcast, I get to talk with authors, therapists, educators, and parenting experts who are committed to this mission. I ask the questions my listeners are most curious about when it comes to supporting our kids. And in turn, my guests share strategies for challenges, out-of-the-box ideas for navigating school, best practices for therapies, tips for advocating, and so many thoughtful insights on what it really takes to help our kids grow up feeling seen and respected so they can create awesome lives for themselves. I know that raising a differently wired kid can feel overwhelming and isolating, but I promise you, you are not alone, and it can feel so much better. If you're on this parenting journey, come listen to Tilt Parenting. Together, we can shift this paradigm and show up for our exceptional kids with hope, possibility, and joy.